welcome back to Meet the Candidates. I want to introduce a candidate for the 4th Congressional District, a Democrat, Ben Sigel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Brett, for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. The Medfield residents have a lot to go over with not just you, but every candidate that they have. I'm so glad that we can set up these interviews. And realistically, I mean, a lot of great candidates right now that are running. I've been really impressed when looking at all the candidates that are out there. But certainly this is an opportunity for you to separate yourself from the pack for our residents.
I think you're right, Brett. And it's a great 9 candidates that are running in this primary, smart, well-intentioned. And honestly, we're not that far off on a lot of the different policies. So I think to your viewers, the big thing is to look at what are their experiences, but what is their approach, both in becoming a candidate, but during this campaign as well. Because I think that's where a lot of us separate each other. I know that's where I think I separate myself from really the rest of the field.
Yeah, and let's go into that actually. We'll start with that, is your background. Very diverse background as well. There's not too many candidates who have that kind of diversity with you, but you're a lawyer, you're Jewish, and you're actually Latino as well. Can you tell me about your background and how that plays into your politics?
Oh, it's a huge part of who I am as a person, but also who I will be as your next member of Congress. So I'm Latino, like you said. I'd be the first Latino ever elected to Congress from Massachusetts. And I think you can agree with me on this, Brett, that we probably need now more than ever to elect a diverse candidate who understands the diverse perspectives of their community, not just racially, but economically and geographically as well. So my mom was born and raised in Puerto Rico, at least 7 generations. Her family came from Spain and Portugal before that. And then my dad, 3rd generation from Worcester, growing up in Worcester. And they met on a blind date, actually, in Boston a long time ago. And I grew up in a blue-collar, middle-class family in Braintree. And why is that important? Because I'm the only candidate who truly understands the perspectives of growing up in a middle-class family in a suburb of Boston that is so similar to Medfield and many of the other suburbs that are here. And having that understanding of the burdens of growing up in the middle class, but also the great benefits of growing up in the middle class. And similarly, today, I have 4 young kids. So I have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and my 5-year-old who runs our house, Francesca, who's moving into kindergarten. Understanding the perspectives of being a 2-parent working family, the costs of childcare, the balancing of work and home, these are really important perspectives for that many in this district are going through. To have a candidate that understands that and is going to amplify the voice of those similar people, I think is important.
Yeah, you know, and going to your website, which if people can see it over what would be, I think your left shoulder, is bensiegelforcongress.com, which is a great resource for not only just your own information, but also you have a lot of great resources for COVID-19, different things that people can go to. So absolutely a great resource that people can go and visit. But throughout that whole website, I have to say, I loved that you're running on a policy of bringing people together. You have that We the Fourth video that's on your website that's really great. But it was bringing people together that through your diversity, through the things that make you different, and it was really how you can come together through that. So that was a fantastic video and certainly something that I saw strong throughout your whole website.
No, thanks for pointing that out, Brett. And I think you're right. Look, from day one, We the Fourth, it means that all 34 cities and towns have a voice. You know, the residents of Medfield and all the surrounding areas, they need to have someone that's going to listen to them, understand them, stand with them, and also amplify their voice and not just try to buy their vote. And so we are the first and only candidates still to have visited all 34 cities and towns in this district, including Medfield, where I visited at the beginning of my tour and actually went to the Council of Aging and went to one of their meetings talking about the needs and issues of the elderly population and our senior citizens. But I'm also the only candidate who's gone to over 20 marches, rallies, and protests in the last 2 months in 15 different cities and towns in our district. I spoke in Fall River, I spoke in Milford, I'm the only candidate who's gone to 14 different town elections to help amplify the voice of the voters in their town elections. This is really important. We need a candidate who's not going to buy your voice, but actually be next to you and understand you, and someone you can trust who's going to amplify your voice in the federal government and throughout the Commonwealth.
And the last thing I'll bring up about your growing up and everything, I thought it was really interesting reading. You're a D1 athlete. You set your school record for the decathlon. That's pretty impressive stuff there.
I did. I think you're smiling because you're looking at me saying, how did this 5'5", flat-footed
I would
person?
never.
No, but look, you know, decathlon was something that's amazing. It's the 10 events. Some people call decathlon of all time. You know, I went to Middlebury College, so Middlebury is a D3 school, but because I was good enough, I was able to go to D1 meets. And I broke our school record on the last meet. The only meet my parents ever saw, and my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, ever saw. And it was something I was so proud of because, you know, to be a decathlete is honestly like being a member of Congress. Quite funny. You have to be good at multiple events, multiple issues. You need to be able to multitask and understand priorities and timing. And if I can do that at 5'5", and be a record holder there, I know I can be a really successful member of Congress to help understand lots of diversity that's in our communities and help amplify those voices.
And you know, you studied in Israel as well. You went overseas, and is that where you met your wife?
Oh, so good, exactly. That was probably one of the best years of my life, right? I married so far up the ladder to someone smarter, more empathetic, and just such a wonderful person. She's been my best friend for over 20 years, and will be 19 years of marriage next week, which is really exciting. But that was a wonderful year for me as a person, as a human being, and as a Jew, to learn more about myself, and to learn more about Israel and be there. I've gone back almost 50 times since then. We have a deep connection between Massachusetts and Israel. We have over 200 Israeli companies here who provide over 9,000 jobs, who represent over 4% of the GDP in this state. So that relationship is really important. Over 30,000 Israelis live here in our district. And so it's something I've loved personally, but it's something I feel very strongly about that's good for our society and our Commonwealth also.
You know, you're going to have to be careful talking her up so much. People are going to write her into the ballot soon, you know?
They should. They should.
Yeah. But one of the actually most impressive things that I saw on your website was the Get Connected named you one of the 50 most influential attorneys of color in Greater Boston and one of the 100 most influential people in Boston as well. So two great accomplishments as well on Get Connected.
No, thanks, Brett. And Get Connected, look, is this wonderful, diverse networking group. And, you know, part of the work I've done is I'm not just someone saying, let's fight racism because it's convenient to say for votes. I've been advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion for years. I'm the president of the Hispanic National Bar Association for all of New England, helping to advance Latino legal interest and interest in the broader Latino community. I've spent time on the Boston Bar Association's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and similarly on my firm's committee, because it's so important that we have diverse perspectives around the table, intergenerationally, racially, economically, and especially in this district that is so gerrymandered and so diverse. It's really an important piece. So I'm really proud of the work I've done, not just in the Latino community and the Jewish community, but in the broader community. Because look, at the end of the day, we're only as strong as the most vulnerable in our communities. And there is a lot of people who are vulnerable right now under COVID-19 and just in general in our community. And we need someone who's going to help lead by pulling them up, because we'll be so much stronger.
You know, I want to get into some of the things that you have that you're running on, the roadmaps that you've actually supplied people through your website. They're highly detailed, really great ways for people to read about what you're actually offering to do. And I think that a lot of times we have candidates that run and they have ideas or they have things that they say, but to actually lay out the roadmaps that you're going to run on and run with is really an impressive way to do it. I want to start with the one is because I haven't seen any other candidate bring this up. I've never seen, it's not often brought up, but it's such an important issue, is the anti-Semitism that you actually have as a roadmap. It's a fantastic, obviously, you went to Israel, you are Jewish, you've talked about that. It's on your mind, it's something that is prevalent for you. But this is the type of work that you've been doing your whole life. You've been a big part of this. Can you tell me about the anti-Semitism roadmap?
Yeah, of course. And thank you for actually noticing that, because I am the only candidate from day one of my platform that has talked about not just combating anti-Semitism, but combating hatred, racism, and bigotry, because it's all interconnected. All of these things are interconnected, but specifically for anti-Semitism, look, I've been the victim of anti-Semitism, both as a kid and as an adult. As a kid, many times being told, pick up that penny, you spick. So being, caught in the middle of being Latino and being Jewish. But, interesting, 3 days before I entered this race in January, I was walking out of synagogue on a Friday night, and a young man, and I say young, he was probably in his 30s, but I'm getting older now, so 30 seems young, came up to me and called me a kike, and told me that my grandmother should have never survived the Holocaust, and that everyone in my synagogue, including myself, needed to be processed immediately. This is January of 2020 in Brookline, kind of the center of the Jewish community in Massachusetts. So this stuff is real. But, like combating racism, one of the main things we can do to combat anti-Semitism is to teach our youth at the earliest ages, kindergarten, first, second grade, that lies, stereotype, and prejudice can turn into hatred and racism and anti-Semitism and worse. We need to teach cultural competency and bias and diversity training to all of our leaders, our religious leaders, our civic leaders, our education leaders. But it can't just stop there. We need to pass tougher hate crimes legislation, and we need to then prosecute those hate crimes legislation. We also need to increase our security funding for our religious and institutional and cultural institutions, right? We need to make sure they're safe. We also, one of the things that's unbelievable about hate crimes is we need to actually do a better job of collecting and providing data about hate crimes. It's all over the place right now. So I'm a big supporter of the No Hate Act, which will allow for that, both not just in the States, but for the FBI to be actually incentivizing people to collect that data. We need to see what we're dealing with. The rise of anti-Semitism has gone up over 128% in just the last year, according to the ADL. And this is something that, again, hate against any group is hate against all groups. The final piece with anti-Semitism, Brett, is there's an international Holocaust definition of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, like racism, is not just a local and national problem. It's a global issue. And so if we can get everyone to agree what is the definition of anti-Semitism, I think we can do a lot more in combating it.
Absolutely. And like you said, a lot of this stuff, it flows together. One of the other great points that you make is your educational roadmap. There's a lot in there that a lot of these issues can be solved if we educate people on the early end. You talk a lot about educating, in kindergarten and those early elementary schools. But one of the things that I actually thought was really interesting in your education roadmap was after people going to school, you have the adult educational vocations. That was something, again, another topic that I've never seen before. I haven't seen many people pitching for that. Tell me about the free adult vocational education, because I think that was something that I read and I was like, that is going to separate you entirely.
And I think you're absolutely right. No one else is talking about, but even before I do, I want to mention one other thing with preliminary education, right? And that's education and engagement. They're the antidotes to racism. They're the antidotes to mental health challenges, to poverty and substance use disorder, right? So we need to focus on that. That's why I mentioned we need to have universal preschool for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, because all of this is interrelated. But I'm so glad you pointed out the free adult vocational education. So look, before COVID-19, we knew in Massachusetts, 200,000 people, there were 200,000 open jobs. and 130,000 people looking for jobs. So why is that? There's lots of reasons, but there's two I really want to share with you. Number one is people didn't have the skills and the training for these high quality skilled jobs. So let's give them those skills and training. Let's make sure that people who want to change industries, want to change jobs, or want to increase their living standards to a higher quality job than they have, get that for free. Let's not allow that to be a burden. And look at, especially under COVID, where we know so many people have lost their jobs, this is their opportunity to gain those skills and training to go into different industries and different jobs and raise their standard of living. So that's number one. Number two reason though, and this makes me really sad, which is we have a ton of immigrants, both undocumented and here with all their paperwork, who have the skills and the training, but don't have the English proficiency to take on these jobs. And what we do is we have wait lists for them on English classes. There's not enough English classes, and then we make them really expensive. So let's take that out. Let's provide grants for more English classes to help these families increase their living standards for jobs that employers really need and are looking for people. That's going to help the employers, that's going to help the families, and it's better for our economy. So it's a win-win situation, and we can use our vocational and technical schools and our community colleges and do the classes there. Let's take advantage of the infrastructure that we have.
Absolutely. Fantastic points all around there. And then the other thing was your immigration. You wanted to create a better pathway to citizenship, recognizing that we do have immigrants here already, and we want to solve that problem by giving them an easier path to becoming citizens. Maybe easier isn't the word, but at least a path for citizenship. Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me about the roadmap there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you bring this up, because for some people, immigration is this third rail, and it shouldn't be, right? It's in the best interest of our entire society and our entire population to help lift our immigrant population, because our immigrants are on the front lines. We call their jobs essential. There are home health care workers, our healthcare workers, grocery store clerks, construction workers. They're working in agriculture to put food on our table, but then we don't treat their lives as essential. And we need to stop that. So look, I believe we need to have a pathway to citizenship for the 12 million plus undocumented immigrants that are here. We need to have permanent status for our TPS holders and our dreamers, our youth immigrants. We need to decriminalize those who have crossed the border unauthorized, because that's what created the separation between parents and their children. That is what has created these horrific detention centers that are costing trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars. Now, more importantly, we need to make sure that our undocumented immigrants have healthcare coverage, unemployment assistance, and driver's license. This is not just a moral and ethical obligation, I believe, because I do believe it's that, but it's far more. It's for safety reasons. It's for healthcare reasons. It's for the best financial interest of our state. We want people to be able to drive to their place of employment to make money, both for themselves and for the state. We want them to be safe, bringing their kids for education. We also know, Brett, that when one person doesn't have healthcare coverage now, that they put themselves in danger under COVID, and they put all of us in danger. And why should they be on the front lines as essential workers and then not get the benefits when they're laid off of actually getting unemployment assistance? We can do better, we must do better, and it's in the best interest of everyone, not just the immigrants.
Absolutely. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, actually, on your website, I got a little bit of my own check here, right? I had a bit of an ego going into these, because I'm like, people don't realize how hard it is to actually interview someone. It's not easy to interview these people, you know? These guys just sit down, they talk about themselves, and that's all that's going on. But you, on the other hand, have an entire slew of virtual town halls where you sit down with a lot of different experts, a lot of different people giving resources, giving information about all these different topics. It's a great resource that's on there. Can you tell me a little bit about your virtual town halls?
Thanks for seeing that, Brett, because, you know, a lot of people aren't going to websites necessarily. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. You know, when we talked about how do you separate yourselves from other candidates, one of the questions one should ask is, what did they do once COVID-19 started? And most of the candidates focused on their own campaign. What I did, I said, I'm going to do this differently. I want to be helpful to the community as if I'm already a member of Congress. So everything I do needs to be, how am I informing, educating, supporting, and protecting the community? And because of that, we were the first candidate to put up a COVID-19 resource page translated into Portuguese and Spanish from literally the first week. But like you pointed out, we did something else. We created 32 Facebook Live and Zoom conversations around topics that do this, inform and educate and support the community. And they're really amazing. And everyone can go to our Facebook page at Ben Sigel for Congress or to our website, bensiegelforcongress.com, to look at these. We talk about how disparities and inequalities are being further exposed under COVID, how the rise of hatred against the Asian American community is happening. We talk about banking under COVID with Bob Rivers, the head of Eastern Bank. We talk about what it's like to actually be a small business with small business owners from Sharon and with the head of the United Regional Chamber of Commerce, Jack Lank. But we also talk about navigating your financial lives during this time, mental health challenges under COVID. We know how tough this is at any age, from children all the way up to our senior citizens with social isolationism. These are all important. And so I would ask anyone, go to these, see what these conversations are. One of my favorite, quite honestly, was we actually had a voice coach come on, Gina Rosone, who talked about how do you harness your digital voice with authority. Now, look, we're all zoomed out. We are all like we're just, you know, tired of being on virtually. But if you're someone who has to be on work to be on virtually, then you need to understand how to best use your voice and your presence in that. And so for me, I learned so much in that hour, and I've learned a lot in the other ones too, but like we're in a different time, in a different period. And that's why another one that we did was about also how do you network virtually? How do you professionally develop virtually? And two other ones that I really liked was we've had high school students get on, one of which started a nonprofit called Project Driveway, about how to use this time to help your fellow community members. And another one talked about what is it actually like to be a senior under this? You don't have your prom, you don't have your normal graduation. How do you determine what college and finalize that decision? And how do you prepare yourself? So please go to those. They're really helpful, they're enjoyable, and they're informative.
Absolutely. And you also have, the last thing I want to ask you about as far as your policies and stuff is the student fellowship program that you have. Tell me about the student fellowship program.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. You're always pointing out such great things. And, you know, our student fellowship is really the engine of our campaign. So every campaign, let's be, you know, honest, every campaign has interns, right? But we wanted to do something more. And so we have almost 50 campaign fellows that are split very equally between high school and college age students. Almost 25% are first and second generation immigrants, and a very diverse group. And what they do is they really help run this campaign. So they help us with policy research, with calling, with texting, with events. And every week we have a meeting where almost all 50 are on, and they help me decide where am I going to be on the issues? What do I need to know about? Because let's be very clear, these young adults, they're not just leaders tomorrow. There are leaders today, and their perspectives and voices need to be at the table and need to be heard. And what I love about it is I have this ability, hopefully, to inspire, empower, and engage them into what we're doing as a community. What are our needs? Who are the voters in this district? And what can we do to make real lasting change? So they're a big part of that.
Ben, that's been a fantastic interview with you so far. I want to close with just an opportunity for you to talk about, you know, speaking specifically to the Medfield residents. Why should they vote for you? What separates you from these other great candidates they have in front of them? What would you like to say to the Medfield residents?
Thanks, Brett. And I really appreciate this conversation and this time. Look, if you truly believe that it's about time that Medfield has a voice at the table, that the everyday citizens of Medfield and residents of Medfield need to have their voice amplified, then I'm your candidate, and vote for Ben Sigel either early, August 22nd to the 28th, or on September 1st. If you believe it's time that we actually have a diverse candidate who truly understands the diverse perspectives of the community, then vote Ben Sigel. If you believe that we need someone who doesn't just talk about diversity, but advances diversity, equity, inclusion, then vote Ben Sigel. And if you believe it's time that we had a leader who's a bridge builder, a unifier, and a connector who wants to make real, meaningful change, not just in the short term, but the long term, then I ask you, follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Go to our website at bensiegelforcongress.com and vote for us either in early elections, by mail, or on September 1st.
And the very final thing I want to ask you about is actually for a personal reason. It'll be obvious in a second, but now access stations have been used so much in order to communicate. They've been through this, not only just this COVID-19 pandemic of connecting everybody the way we have. You just did a debate on Milford TV. We streamed it live here on Medfield TV. We connected the entire 4th District. What's been your experience with access stations? What do you think about us? And going forward, how do you think you'll use access stations going forward?
Look, there's no doubt that more now than ever, access stations have been this wonderful ability to inform and educate the community. Because there is so much going on and everyone is kind of going online or on TV. And so the access stations have become even a more important role. I have personally really enjoyed it because you also have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in your communities and the surrounding communities. And it is a little different in this district. We have the wealthiest part of the state in the northern part of the district. We have one of the biggest immigration populations in kind of the southern part of the district. We have one of the largest conservative parts of this district is here as well. And we have one of the largest Jewish populations percent-wise in the entire country in this district. So it's really diverse, and every town and every city throughout needs to have their finger on the pulse, but needs to also amplify the voices and the organizations of what's happening. And there's no doubt that Access TV has been doing that in these communities. So I have loved that ability to talk, and hopefully I can amplify your voices out there so people are spending more time paying attention to you, but even more importantly, supporting you, because we know how expensive it is to run these access stations and do it well. And we know how little support that you get from the government, from your cities, from your towns, from state and federal government. And so I hope this is an opportunity for everyone to see the great successful opportunities that you all bring to all of us and to better the community.
Ben, thank you so much. I will say I have great support from my local government. I know that I talk to a lot of other access stations. They struggle, they fight, they have a hard time. We are one of the lucky ones who has a great relationship with our local government. That is actually one thing that I know that separates us from the other access stations out there, for sure. It's great to know that you've been talking to us as access stations. So I appreciate that a lot of what you're saying there. But Ben, I could talk to you all day. This has been an absolute pleasure sitting down with you. And so thank you so much for joining us. And Medfield residents, I absolutely encourage you to go to bensiegelforcongress.com. We'll have our graphics up with all the information. But Ben, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Brett. And I hope everyone just continues to stay safe and practice your social distancing, because we are all in this together. So let's get through this together.